You ever have one of those moments where your blood just boils instantly? That's exactly what happened to me the day my wife, my strong, beautiful wife, was mocked for simply existing in her wheelchair. And the person behind it all, none other than the neighborhood's self-proclaimed Queen Bee, HOA Karen. What she didn't know was that the woman she mocked was the very judge who would soon decide her fate in court. It started the day we moved into our new house. My wife Sarah and I were excited. We had worked hard, saved every penny, and finally bought a home in what we thought would be a peaceful neighborhood. Sarah, despite being in a wheelchair after a car accident years ago, never let her disability hold her back. She's the strongest person I know, independent, intelligent, and, to top it off, a respected judge at the county courthouse. But the first week we were there, the HOA president, who everyone just called Karen, made it her mission to introduce herself. Now, when most people say that, they mean a friendly hello and maybe a welcome basket. Not Karen. She marched right up to us, arms crossed, lips pursed like she'd bitten into a lemon. "So, you're the new neighbors?" she asked, her eyes scanning me and then landing on Sarah in her wheelchair. "Oh, well, this community has standards. We like to keep things tidy. Hope you can manage." Her tone made it clear she wasn't just talking about our yard. I saw Sarah's face tighten, but she smiled politely and said, "We'll do just fine, thank you." That should have been the end of it. But Karen wasn't the kind of person who stopped at one jab. Over the next few weeks, she made little comments, subtle digs at Sarah every time she saw us. One day when Sarah was gardening from her wheelchair, Karen muttered loudly enough for the neighbors to hear, "Some people really bring down the image of the neighborhood." Another time, she laughed when Sarah struggled to reach our mailbox. "Should have thought about accessibility before moving here," she sneered. I bit my tongue every time, but inside I was boiling. Sarah, being the dignified woman she is, ignored her. She always told me, "People like her expose themselves eventually. Don't stoop to her level." Then came the breaking point. We were hosting a small barbecue in our backyard for friends and family. Everyone was having a good time until Karen showed up uninvited, strutting in like she owned the place. She started criticizing the setup, the music, even the grill placement. Then, in front of everyone, she looked straight at Sarah and said, "You know, it's such a shame. This neighborhood really deserves residents who can actually contribute, not people who just sit around." The yard went silent. My hands clenched into fists, but before I could speak, Sarah calmly looked at her and said, "You really should be careful with your words. You never know who you're speaking to." Karen scoffed. "Oh please, what are you going to do? Roll over me in court?" She laughed at her own cruel joke. And that's when I saw it, the flicker in Sarah's eyes. She didn't yell. She didn't argue. She just smiled, the kind of smile that meant Karen had no idea what storm she had just invited into her life. See, what Karen didn't know was that she was already being investigated for HOA misconduct. Complaints had piled up from other residents about her misuse of HOA funds, her harassment of homeowners, and even threats she'd made to fine people over the smallest infractions. The case had been sitting on Sarah's desk at the courthouse for weeks. Sarah never mentioned it because she never mixes her personal life with her work. But that night, after Karen's mocking, Sarah quietly told me, "She's on my docket." A month later, the hearing took place. Karen walked into the courtroom with her usual smug confidence, probably expecting the judge to be some old man she could sweet talk. The moment she saw Sarah sitting up there in her black robe, her face drained of all color. For the first time, she had nothing to say. The courtroom was packed with neighbors who had filed complaints against her. They told their stories one by one. How she demanded outrageous fines for having the wrong shade of curtains, how she threatened to tow cars for being parked half an inch too close to the curb, how she used HOA money for personal expenses. And there was Sarah, listening intently, her expression steady and professional. She never once mentioned what Karen had said to her personally. She didn't need to. The truth was already enough. By the end, the evidence was overwhelming. Sarah ruled decisively. Karen was stripped of her HOA presidency, fined heavily for misuse of funds, and ordered to reimburse homeowners. The gavel came down, and just like that, her reign of terror was over. The neighborhood changed overnight. People who used to live in fear of Karen finally felt free. They came by to thank Sarah, not as a judge, but as a neighbor. And as for Karen, she couldn't even look at us. She packed up and moved out within weeks, her pride too shattered to stay. But here's the part that still sticks with me. After the ruling, one of our neighbors asked Sarah why she never brought up the cruel things Karen had said to her. Sarah smiled and said, "Because justice isn't about revenge, it's about fairness." She got what she deserved, not because of me, but because of her own actions. That's the kind of woman my wife is. Strong, graceful, and unwilling to let hatred define her. And every time I look at her, I'm reminded of just how lucky I am. So if you ever find yourself up against someone like Karen, someone who thinks cruelty gives them power, remember this: their downfall always comes from their own arrogance. Sometimes the sweetest justice isn't raising your voice. It's letting the truth do the talking. And in our case, the truth was delivered from the very woman Karen thought she could belittle. That's the full story. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more shocking real-life stories that'll keep you hooked.